Hello, welcome to the Free Your Children podcast. I am your host, Tiffany Boyd, and our mission here at Free Your Children is to share the truth and love about education. There's a battle raging for the souls of our nation's children, and I hope this ministry equips you for battle. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. Ephesians 6:10 through 11. Welcome to all of our Free Your Children followers. If you're new to Free Your Children, we hope you will find the information here extremely useful. We are very busy here at Free Your Children. Summer is beginning for our family, so we are wrapping up the bulk of our homeschooling and starting on some very exciting projects that we have been working on. Free Your Children is in full swing with our seminars as we travel across the state of Tennessee and even across the United States. We will be in Pigeon Forge in June at the Rise Up Con conference with Sam and Kevin Sorbo. So if you are in the Pigeon Forge area, I hope that you will come out and visit us. We would love to meet some of our Free Your Children followers in person. If you are able to jump out or come out and visit us and jump over and visit our booth. And I will also be speaking on a homeschool panel with Kevin and Sam Sorbo. So we are very excited about that. So again, I will be showing the website to Rise Up Con here in just a few minutes. Jump over, purchase your tickets, and come out and visit us there. Also, if you are not following us on social media, I hope that you will do that. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter or X, Instagram, Substack. We also have a free newsletter. You can head over to our freeyourchildren.com website and sign up for our free newsletter there for information as it's happening. I highly encourage you to sign up for that and check that out. We are so thankful that our Free Your Children ministry is growing. We are very excited about what we're working on. As I had said earlier, we are going to be bringing back the FREE Act next legislative session. So we recently had the opportunity to speak at Turning Point USA, Williamson County chapter, and we did a presentation there explaining to attendees what the FREE Act in Tennessee actually is, why it's so important, and why the state of Tennessee needs this piece of legislation. So again, we will be back next legislative session with that bill once again, stronger than ever. And our goal throughout the summer and leading up to the next legislative session is doing as much education as possible. Now, as usual, Free Your Children is experiencing censorship. And there are conservative groups that, for whatever reason, do not seem to want to have the conversations about true school choice and what freedom really looks like. So if you know a group of individuals that are true constitutionalists, that are true freedom-minded individuals, and see the value in parents actually having their constitutional rights recognized and being able to educate their children as they see fit, please have them reach out to me because we would love to present to that group. We believe in truth and transparency, and we believe in freedom of speech. We do not believe in censoring conversations and shutting down one side, so that we feel like families and citizens should have the ability to hear all of the information and that they should then be allowed to make their own decisions. And so we are looking for like-minded, freedom-minded individuals who want to know what's happening in education and who are motivated to take action. And not just here in Tennessee, but all across the United States, because we know that parental rights, educational rights are under attack all across the United States. So what we hope to achieve with Free Your Children is to give families and citizens the information and tools they need to better protect their freedom. So if you're not following us on social media, I hope that you will do that. Check out our website as well. We post the events where we will be speaking there, as well as all of our previous podcasts and radio shows are listed on our website. There's also a toolkit for you to check out. It's a free toolkit with many resources there as well. So I want to take the time to thank some of our sponsors. Of course, our friends of Free Your Children. We could not do this without them. It is because of their generous support that we are able to continue the work that we do with Free Your Children. One of those supporters is the Murfreesboro Pulse. I am a monthly contributor to the Pulse. If you are not signed up for the Pulse and their online publication, I highly recommend that you do that. You can find my author page there again, and there you can read all of the articles that I have penned to date about education. So again, if you haven't done that, I highly encourage you to do that. And they are a fantastic resource for Free Your Children, and we appreciate their support. Also, I would like to thank John Paul Financial Services. John Paul Financial Services is also another supporter of Free Your Children. Here is his website. He has been serving Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, and Florida for more than 30 years. John Paul Financial Services offers a complimentary review evaluation for an estate plan, retirement options, and long-term care planning. Also help with turning 65 and Medicare. So you can find him at johnpaulins.com. That's johnpaulins.com. So again, we want to thank our sponsors. If you are interested in sponsoring Free Your Children, please send us an email at freeyourchildren@gmail.com, and we would be happy to get a sponsorship packet out to you. Again, we can't do this work without supporters such as the ones that we just listed, and also the friends of Free Your Children who see the value in the work that we do. So I am very excited today to have a guest joining us. I'm going to bring her on. We have Colleen Enos with us today, who is affiliated with check.org, and she is the Director of Government Operations for Check. Thank you so much, Colleen, for being willing to join us today.
Thanks for having me.
Actually, Colleen and I were supposed to do a show last week, and we had a major internet outage in our area. So Colleen was so patient and very graciously allowed us to reschedule this interview. So thank you, Colleen, for being patient with us today. The heavens are smiling down on us and saw fit that we were able to do this interview. I think everything was working against us last week. So I'm glad we finally had the opportunity to connect, because I know that our followers will be blessed by the information that you're going to be sharing today. Now, what I want you to do is introduce yourself, tell our listeners who you are and how you got involved with Check and home education.
So my name is Colleen Enos. I am the Director of Government Relations at Christian Home Educators of Colorado, also known as Check. You can find our website at check.org, chec.org. So I got involved with home education after I had my first child. I have many children. I have 8. And so after I had my firstborn son, and he was 4 years old, and he said, "Mommy, teach me to read," that started my quest right there. So I started homeschooling in 1994, and I just finished actually with my 2 twins, whom I graduated last May in 2024. So I homeschooled for 30 years. I also got involved in coaching Christian speech and debate, and I did that for 17 years. And then when my twins graduated last year, I decided it was time for a new chapter. I was connected with check.org that was looking for a new Director of Government Relations, and here I am. So there you go.
That is wonderful. So why, if you don't mind me asking, why did your family decide to home educate?
So it was very important to me to be able to teach my children about every single subject from a Christian point of view. I wanted every subject to be steeped in a Christian worldview, and I understood how it would be presented in the school system if it wasn't me doing it. So my motivation was that I wanted to do it from a distinctly Christian perspective. That's what I wanted. I didn't want them to be sick of education. I wanted them to love it. And so that was my motivation. I've never regretted a minute of it. It was 30 years, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
That's absolutely wonderful. And so, how does it feel now to have an empty homeschool nest?
Well, it's interesting. It's much quieter during the school year. I just graduated one from college in May when my twins graduated from high school, and now they're attending a university. And so it's abnormally quiet during the school year. So naturally, I had to get busy.
Absolutely. Yes, I can understand that. You homeschooled for a long time. Do you think that the face of homeschooling has changed?
I do. I think it's shifted pretty radically, actually, especially with different state governments trying to recapture the funds that they lose because homeschooling is the fastest growing form of education in the United States today. So they are very motivated to do anything they can to make homeschoolers part-time or participate in a publicly funded program, co-ops, those kinds of things, whatever they can do to recapture those funds.
Absolutely. Tell our listeners, you and I were speaking about this before we came on the podcast. I think that for some people who may be new to the homeschooling world, they may not understand that homeschooling looks different all across the United States. So each individual state has their own homeschooling laws, and there are some states that have far more freedom than even Tennessee. And then there are some states that have more restrictions. And so explain what homeschooling in Colorado looks like. How can you legally homeschool in Colorado?
So in the state of Colorado, you have 3 homeschooling options. So your first option is if you're already a certified teacher, you can just homeschool. You don't have to do any kind of notification or testing or anything like that. If you're a certified teacher with the state, then you can just go ahead and homeschool. So that's the first option in Colorado. The second option is that you join some kind of umbrella school, a homeschool umbrella school, who will hold your records, who will track attendance, who will offer certain services. And if you join an umbrella school, check Christian Home Educators of Colorado has an independent school that operates in this format for homeschool families, then that's your second option. You join that, and then you have limited amount of regulations. You just go through the umbrella school or the independent school. That's the second option. The third option in Colorado is that you are an independent homeschooler. For me, this is the way I've always homeschooled, right? As an independent homeschooler. So what you do as an independent homeschooler is you submit 2 weeks before you start to homeschool in any school year a notice of intent that basically lists the names of your children, their ages, and you say how many hours a day, whatever the required amount of hours per year is. And you submit that to any school district in the state. You're not required to submit it to the one you live in. You can submit it to any of them. And then you are required to teach certain subjects, which are, common subjects, the things that you would be teaching anyway. And then after they complete the grades of 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th, you're supposed to do a general standardized type of test and submit those results to either the school district that you registered with, or you can contract with a private independent school or umbrella school for them to hold your records if you don't want to send those in to the government system, which is what I always did. I sent it to an independent private school just to hold them. And that's what I always did. So those are your three options: independent homeschooling, using some type of an umbrella independent school for homeschoolers, or a certified teacher.
We have the independent homeschool option available in Tennessee, and we also have the umbrella school option in Tennessee. And in the state of Tennessee, the umbrella school option is the most widely utilized because it has the least restrictions. However, the problem with that umbrella school option, well, there are many problems with that particular, all the options, but that option particularly because it encompasses the majority of homeschoolers in the state of Tennessee. Those students are not legally considered homeschool students. They're considered private school students.
Interesting.
So that's a problem. However, many of the umbrella schools that families register under in the state of Tennessee do not require testing. Therefore, the majority of homeschool parents choose that option because it has the least restrictions. So in Colorado, families who choose the umbrella school option, are they considered legally homeschoolers, or are they considered private school?
In the state of Colorado, if you fall under one of these three options, you are legally homeschooling. So you are considered a legal homeschooler, regardless of which option you choose. And I know that's different state to state. And I think that really bears repeating, that we have 50 states in the United States. And so we have 50 homeschool laws. They're all different.
Absolutely.
So you really have to get to know and get familiar with the law in the state in which you reside. So, you know, if you're in Tennessee, you need to really understand the Tennessee homeschool law. If you're in Colorado, you need to understand the Colorado homeschool law. And different states classify them differently. So in Colorado, you are actually classified as a homeschooler, not private school, not public school, a homeschooler. But there are other states, such as Tennessee that you just mentioned. I know also in California, I believe that homeschoolers are considered private schoolers. So you really have to be familiar with the law in your state. And that is something that Christian Home Educators of Colorado helps parents with all the time. We put on how to start homeschooling, how to understand the state law. We have a huge conference coming up here in June, the 12th through the 14th at the Denver Marriott Center, the Rocky Mountain Homeschool Conference. And we do these types of classes all the time. And so we're a great resource for you in the state of Colorado.
That is fantastic. And I will also encourage families in Tennessee. We do not, the majority of us are not happy with our current homeschool laws in the state of Tennessee. And so therefore, Free Your Children, the ministry Free Your Children, and families that are affiliated with the ministry, we work together to draft legislation in an attempt to change our homeschool laws. What we wanted to happen in the state of Tennessee was to be given as much freedom as the other now 12 states have. We wanted to become one of the freest states in the nation to homeschool our children. And you and I also discussed this. Tennessee is known as a red state. I think there is a misnomer that it's free. We have seen many people move to the state of Tennessee only to be very surprised and shocked and disappointed that they had more homeschooling freedoms in the states that they left. And then they moved to Tennessee and there was far more regulation. So we decided to draft a piece of legislation that, had it passed, would have put us in the same category as the then 11 freest states in the United States. So what we were doing was historic. Only one other state was attempting to do what we were attempting to do, and that was Wyoming. And we were attempting to have our constitutional rights recognized through legislation to be added to the roster of the other 11 at that time freest states. Wyoming did pass their bill, but Tennessee did not. And the individuals that killed that true school choice, true freedom bill were Republicans. Every single one of them were Republicans. And so they voted against this historic piece of legislation that would have made Tennessee the 13th freest state among the ranks of the 13 freest states in the United States to homeschool. And so we have very convoluted homeschooling laws in the state of Tennessee. And I'm glad you brought that up. I know we talked about that before we started the podcast, how important it was for families to understand. If you're thinking about moving to a state and you are going to homeschool your children, you really need to do some research on what the homeschooling laws in that state look like so that you can make an informed decision based on if this is a place where you would want to reside and home educate your children. Also, if you're in a state and you're not happy with the current homeschooling laws, I highly encourage you to attempt to do what we did in Tennessee and what Wyoming successfully did, was to draft legislation that would recognize true educational autonomy for your family and others that want to home educate their children and teach them as they feel like God has ordained, especially if you are Christians. But it pertains really to any homeschooling family, because if you have true educational autonomy, it's putting the actual parents in the driver's seat to determine how they feel their children should be educated, no matter what that looks like for each family. Just so happens that Check is a Christian organization and Free Your Children is a Christian ministry. Therefore, we choose to educate our children from a biblical worldview. And so my goal and one of our many missions at Free Your Children is to preserve those rights, to preserve those God-given parental and educational rights in order to be able to continue to disciple and teach our children freely without government overreach. So let's talk about that, Colleen. What does government overreach in terms of homeschooling or home education in Colorado look like? Colorado has been in the news a lot here recently, and I know that you have written an article. I'll go ahead and bring that up. It's posted over on Check. Let me grab it right here. You have your articles over on the Check website, and here it is right here. Colorado Goes Woke is actually the title of this piece that's over on the check.org website. And Colleen wrote this. Explain what your motivation was for writing this and what is happening in Colorado that parents need to know about.
Yeah, there's a few things I think that people don't realize. So one, it's important to put the frame around Colorado. There's a Democratic trifecta in our state, which means that the state House of Representatives is controlled by the Democratic majority. The Senate in the state of Colorado is controlled by the Democratic majority, and we have a Democratic governor. So that means we have all three branches of our government, our state government, are blue. So we call that a trifecta, which means that whatever they want to push through, they can, because they have the votes for it. So what I witnessed this last legislative session, which runs January through early May, was this incredible desire to push through all the things that the current administration, President Trump, is standing against. There's very much in the state of Colorado a war against the administration in power right now, where they would actually stand up on the House floor or on the Senate floor and talk about how they were opposed to President Trump and their policies, and they would be very directed at, we're doing this because we're being attacked and all these things. So in Colorado, it's just important to understand that that's the framework we're operating in here. It's very much a blue trifecta. But what I meant when I said Colorado Goes Woke is that I live in the Colorado Springs area, which is probably the most conservative area in the state of Colorado. We have a lot of ministries here, a lot of Christian organizations and families in Colorado Springs. But the state as a whole is electing all these Democrats, even though the majority in Colorado are independents. But if you're an independent, you don't have a voice. You don't have a voice in the legislature at all because it's a two-party system. So their goal here was to push through everything related to, quote, gender affirming care and abortion in the state, to get as much through as they possibly could. Those were the big bills that I followed. They did a lot of other things that you would consider woke as well, but those were the big things. And specifically, they ended on that note. So they waited until the very end, and they would cut off debate on a topic, specifically there's a bill called HB 251312, and it means legal protections for transgender individuals. They saved it going through the second chamber to the very end. And then they would cut off debate on it, so the representatives couldn't talk about it. They did that in the House. And then in the Senate, I mean, they just said shocking things that would shock you. There was one senator that said that he thought he didn't know why a pastor had written to him and had said to him, and I quote this in the article, had said he was going to be held accountable for his choices in the legislature. And he didn't really know if that was going to be the case because he thought he might encounter a trans Jesus when he got to heaven. So clearly mocking Christianity, right? And he felt perfectly fine doing that. So this is kind of the perspective that we have in Colorado. They're trying to push through. It's considered actually a sanctuary state for transgender individuals. They also push through legislation that requires every health insurance policy in the state of Colorado to cover gender affirming care for minors, right? Mm-hmm. For minors, mm-hmm. not just for adults, yep. For minors, for kids. They're required to. So anybody who has health insurance in the state of Colorado has to pay into that. You're supporting that through no choice of your own, but you are, because now it's written into law thanks to the last one of the last bills, 1309, that passed. And Polis is signing. He signed 1312, the transgender protection bill. He signed that on May 16th. And he just signed, I believe, the access to with the health insurance covering gender affirming care and abortion, by the way. Mm-hmm. So if you have Medicaid in the state of Colorado, it's going to cover abortions as well. And there's no citizenship requirement. So anybody can come in. They don't have to be a citizen. And Coloradoans are going to pay for your abortion. And here's the kicker. When it was introduced in the House of Representatives in Colorado, the Speaker of the House is one of the proponents of the bill. She said, actually, Medicaid is going to save money because of averted births. So she's basically saying dead kids are cheaper than live ones. That was her argument. We have her on video saying that. Really disgusting stuff, but that's what we're up against here in the state of Colorado. So please, please pray for us here. We need the Lord to move.
Heartbreaking. And you spoke about transgender medical interventions for children. So are you seeing in Colorado children who are being denied these surgeries in other states coming to Colorado for these services?
Yes, they're actually relocating to Colorado, especially if there is a divorce happening and parents are fighting over custody. One parent is affirming you are the wrong gender, and the other parent might be holding a biblical view or just a biological view. No, you really are, the sex you were born with. So we're seeing those families come to Colorado. They're coming for that care. They're coming because they know it's protected, because we offer it. And now, we're giving it out for free in our Medicaid system here. It's very sad, but it's considered a sanctuary state for transgender individuals and families and children. We're talking about children here.
I know, absolutely horrifying. And I can only imagine what this looks like in the public school system for children who are being sent to government schools. Do you have any insight on
I
that,
do.
Colleen?
We have someone who testified at all of these hearings against these bills, Erin Lee,
Mm-hmm.
and she leads Protect Kids Colorado. Her daughter, actually, I believe when she was 12, was transitioned without her knowledge in the public school system in Fort Collins, Colorado. So she didn't know her and her husband had recently moved to the state, sent her
Okay.
daughter to school, and then there was she was invited to an art club that met, and her mom thought, oh, this, it would be good to get her involved in something. She started attending that. It was actually a gender queer club, and they
Mm-hmm.
told her she was the wrong gender and started transitioning her without her parents' knowledge. So they actually filed suit against the school district. I believe they won. Pam Bondi, the current Attorney General of the United States, was the one who represented their family in this suit.
Mm-hmm.
And her daughter is now her daughter, right?
Okay.
She's not transitioning. She spoke recently at a conference I attended. And so
And how old is her daughter? An adult
she is not,
now?
she is 16 now. Not quite.
Okay, and so she's now detransitioned, I guess is the proper
I don't know
terminology
that
that
she ever like physically went
uh-huh.
through with those treatments, but she's
Right.
back on track. God made her
Yeah.
perfect, a girl, perfectly, because God doesn't make
I
mistakes.
can only yes, and I can only imagine the insight that
Yes,
she has because she experienced this
right,
firsthand.
exactly.
Like you hear about this happening, often, but it's not that often that you actually have an opportunity to hear the perspective of someone that actually a
Yep.
child that actually experienced this, and even parents who have had this happen to them that are now speaking out and what this looked like. And did the family receive a lot of pushback from the school or the counselors, or what does it look like in Colorado if a parent doesn't agree, if a child goes to school and tells their guidance counselor, um, if they're a girl, I think I want to be a boy, but my parents would not agree with this. What does that look like if the parents, come show up and say, we're absolutely against this? How is that being handled in the state of
So
Colorado?
in the public schools, teachers and anyone in an administrative capacity or teaching capacity at a publicly funded school is required to use whatever pronouns students say. So if they want to be called he or she, they or them, and if they want a different name, they're required to use that name. They are
In the
in the
state of
state of
Colorado.
Colorado. And this was
Wow.
as of, I believe that was a 2024 passed in the last session a year
Okay.
ago bill
Hmm.
that schools have had to implement this year, and were coming up with how they were going to do that. They were not required to notify parents.
Hmm.
So it totally depends on the school as to whether they wrote a policy and said, we're going to notify parents if their student uh, expresses gender dysphoria, or we're not going to. It was really up to the school. So it depended on where you sent them, but they were required to use those names and pronouns by law, or they would be charged. Like there
Yeah.
was a penalty with not doing
Wow.
that. Yeah.
I
So
think
that,
yes, it's important, I think, for parents to understand too that a large population of these counselors are trained and they abide by the American School Counselor Association's ethics policies. And I have written extensively about that. And so if you don't know what their ethics statements say, it would behoove you to read that and know, because they get to make the determination if they are safer without notifying the parents. So they
right.
get to make the decision about what they feel is best for the student and how to proceed. If that means communicating with the parents that the child has a desire to transition or be referred to by a different pronoun, they have the ability to make those decisions. They also believe that children should be allowed to use the restroom of the sex that they identify as. And it just goes on and on again about, the position that they operate from. So
it does.
meaning,
That's a really important point about mental health in Colorado.
mhm,
Mental health counselors are required by law to affirm a gender choice. They may not say that they're fine the way God made them. They're required to do
mhm,
that by law. And one of the things that they do in the school system with counseling, or in these, like with Erin and her daughter in this club, was that
mhm,
they tell them that their parents are not safe. They say your parents aren't
mhm,
safe. You don't need to talk to
mhm,
them. So they're telling
mhm.
kids that they can't go talk to
Yeah.
their parents. And if you are involved in a publicly funded co-op program or like a part-time program and you're homeschooling the rest of the time, you need to know that your child is under all of those laws and requirements when they are with them.
Yes.
So don't assume that just because you're using a part-time program or, something
Mhm.
that's a co-op-y, but it's publicly funded, they are under all those same requirements. You need to understand that because they're going to be subjected to the same thing.
I'm glad you brought that up because we are seeing these incentives being
Mhm.
dangled in the faces of homeschool parents and states across the nation, maybe where they have not had those opportunities in the
Right.
past, but now they're offering these
Yes.
opportunities for homeschool children to come in to the public school system, kind of like a buffet, and take a
Right.
class or get involved. And when you do that, you are putting your child at risk of being
Yeah.
identified as at risk by these education professionals, by these master's level school psychologists that have belief systems that you may or may not be in agreement with. Your family may not abide by
Right.
those particular ideologies, and there is a huge push. The Governors Association actually came out with a mental health playbook, and so they are using all of these. Community players and community partners to identify children as what they deem is at
Right.
risk, and so then that gives them the ability to come in. And of course now states can bill Medicaid,
Mhm.
for these services, just like
Mhm.
you mentioned. So there's this has been incentivized monetarily, so there are monetary incentives for
Right.
this, as well as control incentives, because the state of Tennessee passed a piece of legislation last legislative session that opened up at risk boarding charter schools where these children will reside. And so children that have certain, if they have been deemed abused or neglected or have disabilities, they can be placed in these at-risk boarding charters where they will live. And the government is who gets to decide if they have been abused or neglected. So when we talk about abuse or neglect, potentially a child whose parents do not
Mhm.
agree with a child transitioning, that could be deemed as abuse. If a child is considered chronically absent or truant, that can be considered educational neglect. And all of these would earmark a child to potentially be able to be placed in one of these at risk boarding charters. So, ultimately, there is a push for control. If a child is adjudicated and becomes a ward of the state, they are worth a lot of money to the state. These children
Mm.
who are institutionalized, the state is paid hundreds of dollars a day, sometimes upwards of $500 a day, just for room and board to house these children in institutions. So, what homeschool families in particular need to understand is when you decide to participate in
Yep.
anything that is government funded, you are opening your family up for the possibility of a number of things to happen to your child, including them being identified as at risk, or, as Colleen was saying, they may be told that, the parents are not
Right.
safe, that that's not a safe environment. And then the ball
Right.
starts rolling to implement these agendas. And then, depending on the state that you live in, if you're in Colorado and that's a sanctuary state, you could really find your family in a situation that you may not know how to navigate, and you could potentially lose the ability to parent your child the way that you feel like they should be parented. Is that fair
I
to
think
say,
that's fair to
Colleen?
say. I think it's a scary situation that we're in the United States today. And obviously, it's different from state to state. But yes,
Mhm.
I mean, I think agencies assume that
Mhm.
if you are homeschooling, then that student is automatically at risk. So, and we're
Mhm.
seeing
Absolutely.
across the country child abuse cases being linked
Mhm.
with homeschooling because there are abusers out there who are saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to homeschool my kid. But obviously, that's not what they were doing. They have contact with the welfare system and with Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services doesn't follow up. And then
Mhm.
these
Yeah.
kids are being found in horrific situations, and they're saying, oh, it's homeschoolers, but it's not homeschoolers. It's not the deal.
No,
But
no,
they're trying to make
no.
that link.
Yes. Absolutely. That is exactly some of the talking points. They're following the propaganda of the Coalition for Responsible Home
Yep.
Education. Again, I've written extensively about that group, and even presented some information in some of the seminars. For Your Children has been traveling across, again, the United States, explaining to homeschool families some of the threats, the
Yep.
national threats that homeschooling families are having to deal with. And I think that we talked about this earlier. Oftentimes, homeschool families have a tendency to believe that they are sheltered from what's going on in the public school
Right.
system or even in the world because their children are at home with them. But I say often, we are one legislative session away from losing our freedoms. And we cannot be complacent. That is one of the many missions of Free Your Children, is to shine a spotlight on what's happening, not just in the state of Tennessee where we live, but what's happening nationwide. Because I firmly believe that our collective voices are stronger if we are all linked together. And if we can see what's happening in other states, hopefully that will sound an alarm for parents to be vigilant and be making sure that they are on the offense instead of the
Right.
defense, and being prepared to defend their freedoms. Once a bad bill or a bad initiative has hit the legislative session and it's been filed, at that point you're on the
Yep.
defense. They've already been planning to do this. So I think that now is not the time for complacency. Homeschool parents need to activate, and they need to get involved and engaged. They need to be building relationships with their
Yeah.
elected officials. They need to be having conversations with them. They need to make sure that the people that they're electing and putting in office truly believe that parents have the right to educate their children as they see fit. And if you have elected officials that do not believe that, maybe you shouldn't be voting for those
Yep.
individuals. And you definitely should be holding them
Yep.
accountable for legislation that they're voting in favor of, or whatever it may be. If they are promoting legislation that threatens freedoms and parental rights and educational rights, you need to be watching that closely. You need to quickly mobilize it and take action. And while your legislative session is not in session, while they're
Yes.
on break, is a great time to connect with organizations like Check and Colleen and ask them what the best course of action is. What advice would you give to families, Colleen, that live in Colorado? How can they get engaged, and what do you think they should be doing right now?
Well, first of all, I think they need to know who their representatives are. Who is your
Mhm.
who is your representative in the House? Like, what House district do you live in? Who is that person? Who is your representative in the Senate? Who is that person? I've talked to parents that are they're very nervous if the person that's representing them is not a Republican. Maybe it's a Democrat. I cannot overemphasize to you how important it is for you to have a relationship with your state legislators, your senators, and your representatives. It doesn't matter what their political party is. You need to foster a relationship with them. Tell them you're praying for them. Ask them, what do they think about parental rights? What do they think about education? Who makes those decisions? And you have to build that relationship. It's best to do it when you don't have something on the line, like 13, 12, right? Build the relationship now. Go to their town hall meetings. Get to know them. What are they saying? Let them know what you think. Because then when the session is coming up and you hear of something happening, you can be a voice to that person and you already have a relationship with them. It's so important. We did get some of this bill changed because so many people spoke out, but it took a lot of us groups banding together, people calling, people showing up. It still got through. It's not as bad as it was, but it's not good. Right? So we still have work to do, but you have to have a relationship with your legislators, or how are they going to hear your voice if you're not telling them? That's what I would say. Build it now. Build that relationship now.
Yes. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I will say we have parents all the time that contact us and they're embarrassed because they don't know who their representatives are. And I tell them, don't be embarrassed. The only reason you should be embarrassed is if you're not willing to be engaged at all. If you have a question, there's no such thing as a dumb question. The only kind of dumb question is one that goes unasked. The whole purpose of this is to start educating families on how to activate and how to get involved. So there's no shame in not knowing and being new to the political process. Ask the questions and then learn alongside your children. Use it as a learning tool in your homeschool. Teach your children. They will be watching you. You can learn this together, and you can learn how to navigate this together as a family. And I will say, in the state of Tennessee, because we spent an exorbitant amount of time at the Capitol for the special session that was called this past legislative session, the previous legislative session when we were there in opposition to school choice because it had included homeschoolers and we did not want to be included in that. And then again for the Free Act, we were there prior to filing the bill and having it introduced, in the committees. And then we were there as it moved through the committee process. And so we would hear from families that lived too far away to come into, our state capitol to be there, during the committee. However, if you live too far away to go to your state capitol, you still have representatives that serve your area, and you can reach out to them and you can make an appointment to speak to them in person at a local coffee shop, at the library. They may have a local office where you can go in and speak to them. Do not let logistics prevent you from being able to, again, form a relationship and go and have a one-on-one sit-down meeting with your representatives. And now is the time to do that prior to the next legislative session. So I think that is a fantastic piece of advice, Colleen. Do that now. If you have questions, if you live in Colorado and you have questions about who your representatives are, who your senators are, who your elected officials are, you can contact Colleen. Tell our listeners where to find you.
Yeah, you can always email me. Colleen at chec.org is my email. Colleen at chec.org. And I would encourage you to check out our website, chec.org. There's tons of information on how to get started, what's going on. And I would encourage you to come to the conference. There's so much great information there. Get you started in homeschooling. If you're homeschooling teenagers, you're homeschooling high school, if you're looking for groups, getting connected, building community. We just have so many resources. That's what you should do. But definitely, and just know that in whatever state you're in, we have a day at the Capitol that our homeschoolers all go up and we talk to our legislators, and they see all of these families, parents and children swarming the Capitol. And it's wonderful because they recognize that we're a force, right? And they love having kids up there. So your state should have something like that. You should participate in that. Take your kids up to the Capitol. Don't go alone. Take your kids with you. Take them with you and talk to the legislators. They need to learn that too. And many of the committee hearings that happen, if there's a questionable bill, can allow Zoom testimony. So online, so you don't have to physically drive for 5 hours to be there. If it's a big distance for you, you can do it online too. So don't use it as an excuse. Let your voice be heard. Call them on the phone, email them. That's how we made an impact this session, was by doing that.
Absolutely. You have to show up, and I can speak to the taking children to the Capitol aspect. We took children with us every time we traveled to the Capitol, when we sat in committee meetings, when we visited with our legislators, when we were speaking to them about the Free Act as it was heading into the committee. So I will encourage you. You can go to the Capitol with a group of families at any point in time. They work for us.
Right.
And that is your house. The state house belongs to the people. So at any point in time, get your co-ops, your tutorials, make that your field trip, and take a group of children, your children, with you, and go up and visit with your elected officials there, and let your children see what the process looks like. What we did in Tennessee not this past legislative session, but the session prior, when homeschooling was caught up in the push for school choice in the state of Tennessee, we actually downloaded How a Bill Becomes a Law, and we took the printout into the committee meetings with us, and we would show the children, we are right here in this process, and we have to get to here before it is signed, by the governor into law. So it is a fantastic learning process. The children will learn how the political process is supposed to work, and oftentimes they will learn how it's not supposed to work.
What a great learning opportunity for your kids, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I've had students, because I homeschooled my own children, and I had lots of speech and debate students that had come up to the Capitol and said, Mrs. Enos, we love this. We're going to run for office when we're old enough. You can light that spark in your kids for service, serving their country.
Absolutely. I know in the state of Tennessee, I don't know if it's the same in Colorado, but there is an opportunity for students to serve as pages for the legislators. And we have a large number of homeschool children who serve as pages for representatives. And as well as that, even after they graduate from their homeschool career, many have gone on to become legislative assistants for representatives. And oftentimes it's because of the experiences that they had throughout, their career of being homeschooled, to see what the process looks like, that may spark an interest in your children to get involved in public service and make a difference in that way.
Homeschooling is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful thing. And you have the opportunity to do all kinds of things that maybe other students can't do, but you can, because you're homeschooling.
Yes. Absolutely. What is a piece of advice for families that live in Colorado that you would like to give them, Colleen, right now in this climate and culture that you're seeing in Colorado?
I'd say don't be discouraged. We serve a really big God, and he can do really big things. And so I would just encourage you to pray, seek the Lord, trust him. But don't be discouraged. I think perseverance, we've been called to run a race. And so we need to run it. And you don't run a race by giving up halfway through. So Jesus loves Colorado. Jesus loves Colorado families, just like he loves Tennessee families. And he's not giving up on us. And so we shouldn't give up on him. So don't be discouraged. Stay plugged in, get into community. Meet me at the Capitol.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Colleen. Again, give them your contact information where they can find you if they are in Colorado and need more information.
Sure. You can always write to Colleen at chec.org, chec.org, or you can just, you can email the office as well, chec.org, and just with any of your questions, and they will direct you to the appropriate resources, answer your questions, and encourage you, maybe even pray for you if you're having a bad day. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you for all the hard work that you're doing in Colorado. And I know that you're blessing many families and you will continue to do so. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. It's always wonderful to be able to grow our network of homeschool activists and homeschool experts in their own right. And here at For Your Children, we hope to serve as a landing hub to be able to connect people all across the United States with resources and individuals that can help answer their questions and help them navigate their homeschool journey and encourage and empower them to disciple and teach their own children. So a special thank you again to Colleen for being willing to do this interview. I also want to take the time once again to thank John Paul Financial Services, the Murfreesboro Pulse, and also Friends of Free Your Children for supporting us so that we may be able to continue to do the work that we're doing here at Free Your Children. Again, if you have an interest in sponsoring Free Your Children or hosting a seminar, please reach out to me at freeyourchildren@gmail.com. I would be happy to send a seminar packet out to you, a sponsorship packet out to you. Also, make sure you check back on our website regularly to find out where we will be speaking next. Again, we will be in Pigeon Forge in June. Those dates will be announced soon. We will be in West Tennessee in July. We will also be in California in October at a conference there as well. So just keep checking back at freeyourchildren.com for information and dates as we update that. If you are not subscribed to our newsletter, please make sure that you hop over to our website and get signed up for that. Again, you can find us on Substack. You can find us on Rumble, YouTube, X, Facebook. We're pretty much everywhere, so just look for Free Your Children. Thank you so much for your kind words of support and encouragement you send out to us on a regular basis. And again, if you have a group of freedom-minded individuals that you feel like could benefit from the information that we have here at Free Your Children, we would love to be able to have an opportunity to present to them and get them educated. We really feel like education is the key to preserving our parental, educational, and constitutional rights. And I want to leave you with this. If a ruler pays attention to lies, all his officers will become wicked. Proverbs 29:12. We love you here at Free Your Children, but remember, Jesus loves you so much more. God bless.